Hello everybody. So it's Friday 12:49 a.m. and I'm about to go to sleep, but I thought about recording this one right before bed, and I hope the information finds you well. I'm here to talk about the best skill, the most important skill you ever gonna learn in order to get to this industry, to the VFX industry, visual effects industry. And I don't think it's something that people talk about that much when you're doing a class, when you're taking a course or a class. Normally, you're going to be more interested in learning how to sculpt or how to paint or how to animate, things like that. But there's a skill that goes beyond all of those. And even though those are very useful in the case of, when you are about to get to a production, for example, obviously the studio is going to be hiring someone with the skills necessary to create or to, make that vision from the director to come true. And then all the skills are important. But this skill I'm going to be talking about is something that I believe it kept me in the studios I've been working for many years. Instead of getting temporary contracts, I was always a staff. If you don't know my history, I come from Brazil, from banking background. So I was working in the bank since I was 15 years old, and then when I was about 32 years old, I moved to the United States to get my first job in animation. I was actually an animator for a movie called Barnyard. I was discovered online, and it was a crazy ride. I mean, to just imagine not speaking the language, and this was 2004, and then having to learn English, and so that justifies my accent and the fact that sometimes I stumble in words. But it's interesting how many things happened during that time. And then when I got my first job, I got the job at Barnyard, so it was Animation Studio as an animator, like I said, and I was there for about 11 months. I was supposed to be there for a little longer, but I actually got the job offer from another studio, and I left the studio to work for visual effects. So I went from animation as an animator first to working in visual effects as basically a generalist, so I was doing animation for the most part, but I was actually doing some rigging and then some texturing and then some modeling as well. The movie I like to work the best, the coolest one, we worked at VFX back in the day when it was still open. They don't exist anymore. It was a movie called Pan's Labyrinth, which was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and I had a blast in that movie doing multiple things. And I stayed at VFX for about, I would say, close to 3 years. And then once again, I got the job offer from Lucasfilm, and to work for a movie that was kind of like a brand new franchise for Lucasfilm Animation back in the day. And then from there, I got a job offer from ILM. That was about a year later, and moved to ILM. And then at ILM, I spent the last 13 years plus. I'm almost at 14 years now, and during all those this time, it's in all those different studios, I think this skill that actually kept me afloat, made me survive sometimes, in hard times, it was the problem solving skill, I would say. So that to me is something that's not talked about that much. I don't think people pay too much attention to it. And what does that mean? What's a problem solving skill? What is that, right? It's very abstract. I think it comes down to how you're able to tackle problems when they are put in front of you. So let's say every time you start a new project, every time you're recruited to work in a different movie, you're normally going to get some very challenging things that you have to deal with. I mean, every single movie comes with a series of challenges, and then you're gonna end up with a supervisor who is gonna say, okay, I have this character we're gonna have to animate, but then there's this interesting, intricate detail in here that we don't know how to do it. We have to figure out how to make this work. And then you're gonna sit in a room with a lot of very talented, very smart people, and then we're gonna brainstorm about it. And each one of us is gonna bring up like an approach. So how should we approach that? We're definitely gonna be using experiences from past projects, and we're gonna try to incorporate certain things that we maybe used in past projects. But also, if it's something completely new that we have no idea how to do it, you have to have the insight, and it has to be quite fast, you know. It's like to transmit some kind of like comfort and confidence to your supervisor and say, yes, we can do this. I mean, there are ways we can actually approach this. And this all comes from experience, but also comes from a place of being someone who is able to connect the dots. You know, it's like it's basically a skill that you'd have to develop like outside of the scope of visual effects, which is keeping a free mind. You know, it's like a mind of wandering. I would say a mind that actually is not too attached to conventions. And this is a very important thing, I think. You know, it's like in life in general. When we are too attached to conventions, we kind of like paralyze ourselves, you know. So what happens is that if there is a problem, if you're constrained to a series of instructions, like you know, it's like things that you learn either in school or in software manuals or something like that, you think that's the only way you can achieve something. You know, it's like you can solve a problem, but in fact there are many different ways you can approach that, and this comes from a mind that's able to think freely. And I think most of the people that I know in this industry who are in their studios for a long time, I think that's a common pattern. You know, it's like it's someone who is either like extremely talented in what they do, either modeler or more like a TD or creature look dev artist. You know, someone who is extremely good at what they do. But also they have this this thing about like problem solving. You know, it's like they don't take too long to actually come up with solutions on how to solve the problem. You know, and I think that's a very important skill to develop. One thing that I normally think about is in terms of software. For example, like you have those softwares, let's say like Maya, Photoshop, ZBrush, and some of them, they are quite like a little bit sterile in a way. You know, it's like you have like this kind of linear way of doing things. But what I really love about ZBrush, for example, and I'm not making a commercial for ZBrush here, but I really love the software. It was actually the software that brought me to light. You know, it's like as someone like an amateur artist living in Brazil to get some spotlight. You know, it's like ZBrush actually kind of rescued me from Brazil, so I indebted to ZBrush. But the interesting thing about ZBrush is that how unconventional it is. And I know that strikes some people as something that it's like it's a little awkward in a way, you know. So when you're working with ZBrush, you like the first time, for example, and you're trying to use another software as a parameter, you're gonna be very frustrated because it doesn't relate to anything, you know. It's like it's very unusual. But the beauty of the software, I believe, is that once you pass that first like shock, you know, it's like that little wave, and you start understanding what the software does and the ways that you can do things with it, I believe like it's so freeing. You know, it's like it's just like there is like, instead of like having a software like, let's say Maya, which you have a few ways of doing a certain thing. In ZBrush, you have like, let's say 20 ways of doing the same thing. You know, it's like it's completely open, and it's not a linear software, and I love that about ZBrush. You know, so that's how I believe the skill of being a problem solver comes. You know, it's like your mind has to work a little bit in that mode instead of having like this linear thinking that this leads to this, leads to this, and then that's the only way to do that. That's the only way to solve a problem. You have to keep in mind that, you know, it's like your mind is free to wander and to find solutions in very unusual places. And I think that's a very, very, very important skill to have. And I believe this skill, if you are able to develop it, obviously just this skill on its own, it's not going to last, right? Like, it's not going to hold your position. You also have to be a very good technician at what you do. But if you can have both, I think this is one of the recipes for a long-lasting career in any studio. You know, if you can hold that, if you can become important to your team by being the guy who actually can provide solutions instead of just bringing more problems, right? I think you have a great chance to just succeed in whatever you're doing in this industry. So let's keep the video a little short. I have to go to bed soon, but I hope you enjoyed it. And I just kept something playing in the background here, so you're not bored looking at my face staring at the camera. So you have a little eye candy in there. That's a bottle I'm working currently for the current class, and it's just a work in progress, so there's a lot of work left to do. But I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great night, have a great day, and I see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.